Good evening. I'm Chris Matthews in Washington. House and Senate negotiators have agreed to avoid a second shutdown of the federal government. To close the bargain, they demolished funding for President Trump's border wall. The bipartisan committee reached an agreement in principle just as Trump was about to take the stage last night in Texas to make a pitch for his signature campaign promise. It was clear today the president lost.
Am I happy at first glance? I just got to see it. The answer is no, I'm not. I'm not happy. I don't think you're going to see a shutdown. I wouldn't want to go to it now. If you did have it, it's the Democrats' fault. But I don't think it's going to happen. But this would be totally on the Democrats.
Well, the tentative agreement includes just $1.4 billion for a border barrier. That's about 55 miles of new fencing, not a concrete wall. It's a fraction of the $5.7 billion the president was demanding to build about 200 miles of barriers. It's also less than $1.6 billion provided in the Senate compromise before the government shutdown. Well, Friday's the deadline for the deal to be approved by the House, the Senate, and the president. When asked about it today, President Trump signaled he might not support it.
Sir, will you sign Congress's border deal?
I have to study it. I'm not happy about it. It's not doing the trick, but I'm adding things to it.
But late tonight, in a series of tweets, the president said he was looking over all aspects of the plan and added that regardless of wall money, it is being built as we speak. The president's already taking a beating from his allies, especially from the hard right in the media. Last night, Fox News host Sean Hannity broke away from the president's speech to slam this proposal.
By the way, on this new so-called compromise, I'm getting details, $1.3 billion? That's not even a wall, a barrier? I'm going to tell this tonight, and we will get back into this tomorrow. Any Republican that supports this garbage compromise, you will have to explain.
Well, another Fox host, Laura Ingraham, also panned the deal, and Ann Coulter tweeted, Trump talks a good game on the border wall, but it's increasingly clear he's afraid to fight for it. Can this be his yellow New Deal? A White House official today told NBC News that even if Trump were to sign off, quote, other options are on the table to build a more substantial barrier, but not through another government shutdown. On Capitol Hill, Senate leaders from both parties said it's time to end this stalemate.
I have recommended that if it becomes what we think it is, I do recommend he sign it.
The president should not make the same mistake he made a couple of months ago when there was a bipartisan agreement and he wouldn't sign it and cause the shutdown. Please, Mr. President, no one got everything they wanted in this bill, but sign it and don't cause a shutdown.
I'm joined now by U.S. Congresswoman Katie Hill, a Democrat from California, Robert Costa, national political reporter for The Washington Post, Yamiche Alcindor, White House correspondent for the PBS Newshour, and Jason Johnson's politics editor at TheRoot.com. Robert, is this Stalingrad? Is this the first big defeat for this president that could augur more defeats to come?
Depends on the audience. Just talking to Senator Shelby at the Capitol, he explained to the president, this is the best you're going to get. The president's going to review the details. Of course, people on the right wing, they don't like it, like Sean Hannity and others, members of the Freedom Caucus. They're not going to support it. But the president has something in his back pocket, officials tell me, taking executive action, using an executive order to take federal funds from elsewhere and putting them on the border. To him, he's going to make the case that that's the way of going to the brink.
But he decided not to go to the brink on another government shutdown and not to go with an emergency declaration, right? So he's going this more subtle way.
He doesn't have leverage anymore. White House officials privately acknowledge that. They know there are many votes in the Senate to keep the government open, even if the president refuses to do so. They know the Senate Republicans will fight him on a national emergency. So in their eyes, they have to take this deal, complain about it, fume about it on Twitter, but sign it, then use executive power to say to the base, I'm doing all I can.
You know, Congresswoman, this all began, I think, when your speaker, the Speaker of the House, said it's immorality. It's an immorality to build a wall. The word wall became unacceptable. It seems like that's when the victory began on your side.
I think that the Speaker has done an incredible job of negotiating this whole process, and she really showed her leadership skills and how adept she is at handling this whole situation.
Why is a wall more offensive and more immoral than a fence?
You know, I do think that there's been a lot made of the semantics of the wall, and personally, I think it's going to be a relief for me to move beyond this and to say, listen, 55 miles of some kind of barrier it's not the end of the world. It's something that I think is, it makes sense in certain parts. It's an extension of what we've already had. It's coming from experts of where it makes the most sense. And we have to recognize that we still only have the House of Representatives, right? We don't have the Senate. Yeah. We don't have the presidency. And to me, we are definitely coming out on top in this arrangement. We have 1.375 going towards that compared to the 1.6 that he had in the deal that he shut down the government for. We got fewer beds for ICE overall. And I think this allows us to really set the stage for what's going to come next.
Hey, Yamiche, what do you make of this? Because I think the Democrats, the party left, which was pushing for basically a cap on the beds because they want to have less people being picked up here by ICE. In fact, some of them want to get rid of ICE. They don't want any more detentions than necessary. They basically went along with this deal. Trump went along with less money than he could have actually started with the Senate proposal in the beginning. So he lost. The left lost a little. The right, in the form of this president, lost a bit. What have we accomplished in this government shutdown for the American people? Anything?
What we accomplished was how divided government is going to work. This idea that President Trump can shut down the government and then get his way is now, I think, something that the president understands isn't going to happen. And I think on the Democratic side, they realize that they also can't completely hold the line and say that the president can't get anything that he wants because they also had to make a deal here. I think when it comes to the wall, it's clear that Democrats said that they weren't going to give not $1 for the wall. And what we have is Democrats saying, yeah, we're going to give some money for new fencing. The president's going to be able to call that a wall. Democrats are now having this conversation about whether or not there's concrete versus metal. Some of the sources I'm talking to say it's not a wall because it's not concrete. That's negotiating on President Trump's terms. That's an argument he wants to have, whether or not something's a wall because of the materials. And then when it comes to the detention beds, even though the number looks like it might be smaller, we have this idea that the president can also stretch these funds out to get to the 52,000 beds he initially wanted if he wants to do that. I've been hearing from conservative activists and liberal activists. They're both very angry. So that tells me that there is compromise here and that it is a solid bill because everyone seems to not have gotten exactly what they wanted.
Well, today, President Trump repeatedly suggests the wall's already being built. Figure that one out, but here he is.
Happy with where we're going? I'm thrilled because we're supplementing things and moving things around and we're doing things that are fantastic and taking from far less important areas. And the bottom line is we're building a lot of wall. Right now, we're building a lot of wall.
We're building a lot of wall. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina argued Trump could get the rest of the money he needs for the wall by taking money from other areas or by taking more drastic action. Here's Lindsey.
As to the money for the barrier, if he can use it on steel barriers like he's been talking about, I would say that's overall a pretty good deal. And he'll make up the difference between 1.375 and 5.7 through executive action.
Even with this deal, do you think that it will still require national?
Absolutely. Because it's well short of what he needs.
Jason, this guy, Lindsey Graham, has certainly signed up for the cattle drive all the way. He's not quitting. I've never seen anybody more loyal to anybody than since Sancho Panza or Tano or someone like that, or I don't know who, going back to the cowboy movies. But what in the world do we get here? It looks to me like every time we have a government shutdown, what do the American people get? Some more beds and 50 more feet of fencing. I mean, is this some pathetic country somewhere would be doing something like this with a fight between the parliament and the president? It just seems so. I could give it a Pollyanna thing. I mean, Yamiche gave a little effort in the Pollyanna direction. I could do that and say, oh, great, our government's back to compromise. This thing's really working because nobody's happy. Well, that includes the American people. Nobody's happy, not just two sides in a fight in D.C. It looks like
no.
Pissant
Nobody
government,
really benefited
to use a
from
phrase.
This. Yeah.
Your thoughts?
You know, this is sort of government by abuse, right? You make millions of people suffer, and then you say, look what we accomplished after torturing you unnecessarily. Look, the idea of a government shutdown as a negotiating tool has never been a good idea, but it is now essentially broken. No one will ever be able to shut down the government again as a cudgel for negotiation. The Republicans have no strength for it. The Democrats will never stand for it again. And the end result is not the things that would have made a government shutdown ultimately valuable for either side, which is something about DACA or comprehensive immigration reform. But I also, Chris, I think the bigger issue is this, and this is something that I think a lot of Democrats have learned and Republicans have quietly begun to accept when I've had conversations with people sort of off the record, is Trump did the worst thing possible. He didn't just lose the battle. He empowered his enemies. He has made Nancy Pelosi more strong, more respected, and more capable than she was before this shutdown. And that's not something he's going to be able to stop.
I think that's. I watched Nancy Pelosi. She showed up at some big event the other night, a concert or something. It's the kind of thing you show up at when you're winning. And then apparently she's been seen at a lot of night spots in San Francisco lately. You always show your face a lot when you're winning.
Absolutely.
It's so interesting to me. But what he just said there, momentum.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? And it sets us up in a good position for what we want to do next. I do think that it really proved to everyone that a shutdown isn't the way that you do this, right? And that this isn't a negotiating tactic that's going to work. I think that it's left the Republicans bruised moving into the next phase. Whatever he tries to pull after this in terms of executive action, it's clearly going to be a half measure. It's probably going to get stopped in court, and it's certainly not going to be satisfactory to his base, no matter what. So
what I like about Nancy Pelosi, she's a leader, and I work for a speaker. I know the limits of because it's really about personal authority, prestige. There's no power. You can't fire a member of Congress. No. You can't beat him in a primary. That's all nonsense. Roosevelt couldn't even do that. But when she did the little thing during the State of the Union, you guys all, okay, this is the whole monitor. We'll live with it. But even now, in the last few hours, it seems to me she was able to at least keep the people who are more aggressive in terms of the ICE and people like that, Ocasio, OAC, and the others. I mean, they have a point of view, and she has to accommodate that, but she also has to get the government running again. I think how's she do it?
She really never ceases to amaze me with that and how she controls the caucus. I mean, the people that she put onto the negotiating group with appropriations clearly was very strategic. I mean, Barbara Lee and members of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, and that represents the whole spectrum of people within the Democratic caucus. And it's pretty brilliant. It's going to get a lot of people on board. We'll probably lose a few within the Democratic caucus, but I think we're going to get some Republicans, and ultimately that'll get you the votes. And that's what Nancy's a pro at.
As Larry David would say, pretty good. Anyway, in a tweet this morning, Freedom Caucus Chair Mark Meadows, the other end of the line, criticized Democrats, saying, quote, if this is the best they can do, it's obvious they have no interest in serious border security. At this point, it's clear POTUS should take executive action. But several Republican senators urged the president to sign the compromise, warning against a second shutdown.
There is no way that the country should be put through another disastrous government shutdown. My hope is that the president will sign the bill into law.
I hope we have this behind us. We don't shut down again. Shutdowns never work for anything, and this one has reaffirmed my belief that shutdowns are bad, period.
Let me go to Robert and the president, how he's going to deal now with the media on the right. I mean, Sean Hannity's a talented host of a TV show. Ann Coulter's amazing. She survived for years without really having a job, just being able to write books that guys buy, I guess. They make them feel excited or something. I don't know why, but they do. They like her books. She's a good writer. And, of course, Laura Ingraham's been around forever. She's great on television now. She used to be just good on radio. But they're basically performing to a minority of people, and they're good at it. The 10 or 20% or even less. And they're really good at building an audience. But that's not 50% of the country. Does the president know that? It's not a leadership position to be in, to follow their lead.
Well, to bring it back to Congress, you think about Mark Meadows, the Freedom Caucus chairman, those voices on the right. They could be in the president's ear in the coming days. And this has Republicans on Capitol Hill nervous because they know the president is likely going to sign this deal based on their own conversations in mind with White House officials. But there's a chance, they worry, that he could push to sign what's called a CR, a continuing resolution that doesn't appropriate anything, that just keeps the government open. And that could happen if the right puts that kind of pressure on him. At this moment, the White House, I think, wants to move away and have a deal. But there's always that chance he says, no deal, no appropriations, just keep the government open. I want to continue to negotiate.
Well, what would be his exit strategy if he did the CR route?
If he did the CR route,
a week from now, he'd still have to be the hard right of the media and showing and arrest him, still pounding him. He wouldn't be more comfortable then, would he, to continue bringing the government back?
The argument from the right wing today has been if you do a CR, if you keep the government open and don't do this appropriations, you just put pressure on Democrats, in their view, by having more time on the clock for negotiations. But that's not going to hold water. Senate Republicans and Senate Democrats, the leaders in both parties today said, sign the deal, Mr. President.
Jason, your thoughts finally.
Yeah, look, the president is trapped. If he goes for an executive order, it's going to get knocked down by the courts. We can see that by Roberts. He's not going to allow this sort of thing to happen. The Republicans in the Senate have absolutely no passion for this kind of bill. This is a huge L and a loss for Donald Trump. And he's got to figure out some other part to having a domestic agenda other than this wall, or he's going to waste the rest of 2019 and get picked apart by the Democrats running for president.
Your ability to see through John Roberts is better than mine. I know he supported and opposed that measure down in Louisiana, which would basically banned abortion in the state. I'm not sure he may owe the president one right now. But anyway, U.S. Congresswoman Katie Hill, thank you, of California. Robert Costa, the Washington Post, Yamiche Alcindor, PBS, Jason Johnson of The Root. Coming up, 27.